Disc golf took a major step to get where it is today when Ed Hedrick, better known as Steady Ed, patented the chain-style target and organized the Professional Disc Golf Association. Ed had a long career in development of disc sports, working for Wham-O Corporation beginning in 1964. While at Wham-O, Ed had received credit as being the inventor of the Frisbee disc. In 1976, Ed left Wham-O and went ahead and founded the game of disc golf. Later that year, Ed also built the world's first disc golf course in Oak Grove Park in Pasadena, California. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Frisbee Club was on its way. Jim Powers, who had just graduated from college, began the club as the Valley Forge Frisbee Club, and the club was gathering of fans from many variations of disc sports. The club began playing at the Valley Forge Junior High School. The club's motto was, "Advancement of physical and mental fitness through Frisbee sports and recreation." The club's two favorite disc sports were ultimate and disc golf. Eventually, to broaden the image, the club's name was changed to the Philadelphia Frisbee Club and acquired land in Fairmount Park at the Belmont Plateau.
When I first came around the Philadelphia Frisbee Club, Jim Powers was the president. Strong members were Darby Willamy and Dave Stemble. I think there was a guy named Rick Vlam that was around. And I think that the club was so strong that we've kind of adopted other states. From there, we became the Tri-State Club, where we allowed Delaware and New Jersey to be part of the Philadelphia clubs. And this strong alliance formed right here at Fairmount Park in Philadelphia.
They were carving out an area, actually it was up on off of City Line Avenue. And then the folks said they didn't want it there, so the city of Philadelphia gave us this. The Philadelphia Frisbee Club carved the course out. The city of Philadelphia gave us the land, and they did the work and put the baskets in the ground with cement and all that. And I guess Ed Hedrick and Wham-O, through a guy nicknamed the Stork, Dan Roddick.
During this time, a multi-disc sport event named the Philadelphia Frisbee Championships was a major success that had a huge turnout. Ed Hedrick and Wham-O were so enthusiastic about the turnout that they offered to supply the baskets if the club members would only just supply the manpower.
Jim Powers, the founder of the course and founder of the Philadelphia Frisbee Club, he was involved in early organizations, and he ran a big tournament over in Belmont Plateau in 1976, and the International Frisbee Association had some people here and watched the tournament, and they thought that Jim was the guy to have the first pole hole course on the East Coast. And they said, "Jim, can you try to find a park that would host a course?" Jim made contacts with Fairmount Park Commission right here in Philadelphia and said, "Hey, if I get the IFA is willing to donate the baskets, can you donate the land?" And the park, being the park, limited budget, said, "Absolutely. If you're going to donate the baskets and your club's going to install them, we can find the land." First land was on the west side of the river near St. Joe's College, and the club started clearing land there. But the Fairmount Park Commission decided, no, it's too close to other activities, and there wasn't any parking at that time in that area, and so they changed their mind. The park said, no, we want to give you a little corner in the east side of the river. It's right near what was the historic Sedgley Mansion, which is how the name Sedgley Woods got its name, from the Sedgley Mansion. The mansion's sadly gone, but the gatehouse is still just a few blocks from here. So in '77, they laid out Sedgley as an object course, played it for about a year, and then in '78, the summer of '78, the baskets arrived from the IFA, the 18 donated baskets, and the club set about digging the holes, pouring the concrete to set them in place. These were the original Mach 1 baskets, single chains, very small and shallow basket. This is the type of Frisbee which was used in those days. Was bought in a store, came in a box. It was a world-class Frisbee. This one happens to be a 141 gram Frisbee. We used these for a couple of years. Then we started playing with Midnight Flyers. Ed Hedrick started the Disc Golf Association, started taking this mold and pumping it up with glow-in-the-dark plastic. The glow-in-the-dark plastic was much denser, heavier, so these would go much farther. He also started making them in a smaller size because the smaller and heavier discs would go farther and would be more stable. So this was state-of-the-art 1978, 79 when the baskets first went in.
During this time, there was a diverse interest in a variety of disc sports.
Back then, it wasn't so much two different sports. It was an overall kind of thing. You played freestyle, you played distance, you played golf as overall Frisbee sports. It wasn't just one thing that people did generally. And then it kind of specialized, and now most people just play golf.
I found that through the Philadelphia area Frisbee Club, there was only 2 or 3 freestyle events in the area, but there was a disc golf tournament every weekend. And I enjoyed doing that, and I enjoyed the people that I met, so I began golfing just as much as freestyle, if not more.
As the sport of disc golf started to grow in popularity, so did the excitement and the buzz about the Sedgley Woods course, being that it was one of the few disc golf courses in existence.
Sedgley, I think we've determined Sedgley is about 6 or 7 in the official history. It definitely was the first on the East Coast, first permanent basket course, pole hole basket on the East Coast. And because it was the first, all the big tournaments were here. Through the 70s into the 80s, the biggest golf tournaments were right here. It's hard to imagine now, it's just sort of a sleepy little course. But back then, it was the place for big tournaments.
I would just drive down here to play. This was the place. This was the only disc golf course in this part of the country. It was about 50 miles from me, but I would come down here maybe 4 times a week just to play because it was a good social scene and it was disc sports, and that's what I enjoyed doing.
At this time, in the late 70s and early 80s, both disc design and course design were done rather crudely in respect to needs and objectives of the sport.
Back then, the discs were a lot different, and the tees, the holes were a lot easier. The course was originally designed to be played with regular Frisbees that you could buy at a discount store. Now, it's a little more competitive, it's a little more difficult, and you have specialized Frisbees that you use for all your different shots, distance shots and putting shots and of the nature.
And the course was played with discs like this, which we call lids, and they're 80 molds, and they're very fragile in cold weather. So the game used to be played like April through maybe October, and then we would stop playing until we came here for a New Year's Day tournament. And that's when we would sacrifice these kind of discs to the winter gods, and you hit something, they just broke. And so the game didn't get started that way until like 1983. But I lived in the area, and I used to come here very often.
They were old Mach 1s. They single chain, very skinny. They were the first generation Mach 1s. They were maybe this wide, single chains. But back then the discs were much bigger too, so they caught all right.
There was no specialized discs when I first started for playing golf. You played with what you had, and whatever. Usually the biggest discs were the ones that you could throw the furthest, and that's I was used to playing with ultimate discs, and that's what you'd usually use. Then a revolution started to take place where disc golf manufacturers of Frisbees started coming out with different discs that you could use that were heavier and you could throw further. And that kind of started to change the game of Frisbee golf a little bit. And from there, instead of just being heavier, they tapered the edges of the golf discs so they'd have less wind resistance and could go even further. And then they started making them even heavier and denser so they could go even further, to the point where, and I'm not sure what year this would be, they started to have regulations on how much weight a disc could hold depending on its diameter.
The baskets have an evolution that started with what was known as a Mach 1, single chain, thin chain, basket only about this deep. Then of course Mach 2, Mach 3, and now there are Mach 5s where it's double chain, heavier link, baskets are deeper, and instead of just one row of chains, you have an inner row and all that. Still doesn't help me keep my disc in the basket, but it's easier to put them in the basket now than it was in the old days.
In the end, after careful refinement, it is interesting to see how each disc sport has grown into its own entity.